Let's talk.
John Brown.
Lella Lombardi, The Tigress of Turin, is her authorized biography. It's by John Saltinstall. It is about the life of the most successful, in points at least, female racing driver of all time. Delighted to say that he joins me from somewhere, obviously, in a pit garage near Monza or something like that. Morning to you, John. How you doing?
I'm good, thanks, Charles. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. Okay, just want to start off by saying the listeners can't see this, but I am in awe. I am in shock and awe of your study, your studio, your man cave. From what I can see, there are at least 3 guitars. Oh no, oh my goodness, there's a mandolin, there's a Rickenbacker in there as well, there's an acoustic, there's a Strat. I mean, there's no end. Plus, there's a recording studio. Plus, there's the book itself. Plus, there's something from Jackie Ickx there, and that looks very much like Niki Lauda. The Ferrari 312 lurking in the background.
Yeah, that's a pretty comprehensive roundup, actually. Yeah. I'm very happy with the Lauda one because he actually signed that one. So it's a nice little Alan Standards drawing. But yes, I'm in my happy place here. This is where the writing happens, but it's also
I can't see how you can get any writing done. I can't see you can get any writing done with all that there. I mean, I would sit down to go, it was a dark and stormy night, and then go, okay, D sharp, the saddest of all keys. I mean, that's the way that we do it. Go on.
No, I was going to say the bit you can't see is the 5 synthesizers that are stuck against the wall on the other side. So
right, okay, well, fair enough. I'm here after a man after my own heart. Now, for if you're a petrolhead like myself, you know all about Lella Lombardi. But to the general public, there's always this debate about modern F1, and we've got Dana Patrick, who is an interesting quote unquote character, and people are saying, female racing drivers are amongst the front runners in Indy. We had people like Desiree Wilson, Davina Galitza in the Aurora Formula One series, and that dates me, but there you go, back in the 70s and early 80s. But there have been female racing drivers even in the 50s. But of course, the Tigress of Turin, Lella Lombardi, is the only one thus far to have scored a championship point.
Well, it's your classic pub quiz question, isn't it? Who's the only woman who's ever finished in a point scoring position? And the problem is that F1 dominates the sport to such an extent that overshadows everything else in her career. So it overlooks the fact that, she was Italian Formula 850 champion in 1970, beat some blokes who ended up as top Formula 2 drivers. She won the Ford Escort Mexico Challenge in Italy in 1973 against a similar sort of field. She was the first woman to hold a Works F1 contract. She had the highest placed post-war finish for an all-female crew at Le Mans in 77 with Christine Beckers. She was the first woman to win a full FIA-sanctioned international race. In fact, she won 3 of them in the World Sports Car Championship. She was Italian Group 6 Sports Car Champion, and won numerous Division 2 class victories in the European Touring Car Championship. So there's a whole lot more to Lella Lombardi than this sort of half point in the 1975 Spanish Grand Prix. But it overshadows everything. And
also, I mean, let's just go back to those achievements, just rolling them off. That's tasty. Because at that point, you've got, F2, it's an F2 at that point really was, a breeding ground of drivers. And the sport, Le Mans, for goodness sake. It is, a huge achievement for any driver. And World Sports Car Championships as well. You've got drivers, not like today where you've got, drivers, F1 drivers very rarely can do a whole season. But she's competing against, your Ickxes, she's competing against your Schechters and whatever in those races.
Christ, if you look at her, at the field that she raced against, whoops, knocked my book over, in 1975, the field that she raced against in F1 in that year that she got her point, there's about 15, 17 guys who would win Grand Prix or become world championships. And there's a huge amount of strength and depth in that field that you probably haven't got in a current field. Adding to which, of course, the F1 cars of the day, no manual, no automatic gearboxes, no power steering, no servo-assisted brakes. Everything was incredibly physical. And she'd come into that from doing a series of Formula 5000 the year before. And for anybody who doesn't know what Formula 5000 is, imagine an F1 or an F2 car, but instead of having a purebred racing engine behind you, you've got a big sort of 5-litre American muscle car stock block.
Yeah.
With a centre of gravity somewhere above your shoulders that doesn't really like following the front wheels very much. You know, they were very...
Best description I've heard it for a long time. I'll take that, yeah.
Well, yeah, I've spoken to a lot of Formula 5000 drivers who've told me what they were like. Lella didn't speak a great deal of English, but she was quite good at one-liners. And in the mid-1970s, there was a very popular practice amongst the magazines that they would send a journalist out to track test a car or whatever, and Motoring News, Motorsport, Autosport, whatever, would then write a little article about it. And in 74, one of the test journalists sort of drove a T330 Lola, which is what Lella had been racing in Formula 5000, and sort of says to her afterwards, you have to be a truck driver to drive one of these things. Completely overlooking the fact that she'd learnt to drive in the delivery truck of her dad's butchery business, at which point she sort of turned around and sort of showed him her muscles and said, yeah, I am a truck driver. Have you seen the muscles I've got? So she was... for a woman who kept herself to herself for so many reasons, she was very good at these sort of pithy little one-liners.
And it's interesting you say that, her background, because she's not from one of these rich industrialists, because Italian racing drivers either tend to be like Castellotti, sort of movie star good looks or whatever, and, seamlessly elegant in the whole thing and come from Milan industrialist families, or they come from literally from the streets up. And this is very much sort of, a woman in Italy, in the 60s, being a racing driver, that's turning the macho culture on its head.
Yeah, absolutely. She was born in the middle of the Second World War, in northern Italy. The Tigress of Turin moniker is a complete misnomer. It's thanks to John Webb, who used to run Brands Hatch and was very, very good at promoting motorsport. He was a champion of women in motorsport, actually, but, she's from a tiny little village called Frugarolo, which is a 2,000 person village near Alessandria, which is nearer to Genoa than it is to Turin. But Webb quite realistically recognised that very few Europeans knew where Alessandria was, let alone Frugarolo. So the Tigress of Turin kind of rolls off tongue a bit. So he coined the name for her. But so she came from this little sort of backwater where her dad was the butcher. He was doing okay. He sort of exported his salamis along the Ligurian Peninsula. But nobody in the family knew how to drive. They employed drivers. She had 2 older siblings, but neither mum nor dad nor any of the siblings had any interest in driving. But she was obsessed with anything with an engine from a very early age. One of her childhood friends told me that when she was a kid, she'd get her roller skates and put her hands in them and run them around the floor like cars rather than put them on her feet. So she was a completely self-taught driver, and then sort of learned to drive the butcher's van. So I spoke to family members and employees who told me the stories of them riding around in these in the butcher's van doing all sorts of harebrained things around northern Italy.
The fastest salami truck driver in the north, basically.
Yeah, so she was described as that by, I think, one of the Autosprint journalists. I think it might even have been Franco Lini, described as the fastest salami driver in Italy. So,
It's all very well being, getting, stripping a Vespa down and thundering around, scandalising the village and the priests and everything like that. So, which
she did, yeah.
Which she did, obviously. But how does she make that move into Formula racing then, into single seaters?
Well, she first got herself around motorsport by racing in very, very amateur sort of car races that were knocking around in northern Italy at that time. Nothing in any kind of organised sense, and so amateur that there are no records of them. She was a bit inspired by Susie Raganelli, who eventually actually became the only woman to ever win a four-wheeled FIA championship, who won the world's karting champion in 1965. We're going off on a tangent here. Susie Raganelli was Ronnie Peterson's girlfriend, and she beat him in the karting world championship in 65. There we go. But Lella through. That's
a pub quiz question and a half, isn't it? That really a motoring nerd.
On that, yeah, because and she was the real deal as well. Lella sort of then started hanging around people who were doing rallies and that sort of thing, jumped in as a co-driver with one of these guys, eventually asked if she could have a go, and promptly went out and did very well in this regional rally.
Yeah.
And really got a taste for racing at this point. And she was very fortunate that in 1965, a sort of academy formula was launched at Monza, called Formula 875, which became known as Formula Monza. So Formula V existed in the USA. It had been around for just about a year. Formula Ford had yet to happen. But Monza thought that it would be a good idea to have a training formula based on the sort of the little Fiat Giardina road car. So a few local builders agreed to put together these little single-seater chassis that had, usual story, more power than grip, a bit oversteery, and you'd have bunches of nutcases basically driving these things on, learning to drive on the Pista Junior, which is the shortened Monza track. If you imagine Monza as it is today, just about where the first chicane is, instead of going off around the main track, it hung a right, did a bit of a zigzag, and then came back on the Rettifilio, back down to the Parabolica.
Oh, but it's still got the Parabolica in it. I mean, okay.
You've got the Parabolica in it. Which could be quite exciting, I should imagine, in something with more power than grip and that's a bit oversteering.
Yes.
So, the idea was to teach young Italian drivers how to handle a single seater, but also to train marshals how to marshal and car preparers how to prepare cars. Absolutely. Yeah. So they were all learning the ropes. But a lot of young Italian talent cut their teeth there. And when you look at some of the people who came through that, there were people who went all the way from there.
Are we? Can I just drop? Because we talked about the tiger from Turin. Are we talking the Monza gorilla? Is he involved at this point?
She was big friends with the Monza gorilla. He was a bit older. So Vittorio Brambilla and his brother Tino they were a couple of years older, so were a couple of years further further down the line than her. They didn't race against her in Formula 875 because they were already beyond that level. But she was big friends with Brambilla, and she
because he is, isn't he? I mean, in a world where racing drivers are politically correct and slim and watch their diets and whatever, I've got a very soft spot for the Brambillas because they are absolute throwbacks.
I mean, Brambilla was completely unreconstructed, wasn't he?
Yes.
He was. I mean, Lella was famously gay, but when they were teammates at March in the 1970s, 1974, 75, Brambilla would say to her in the pits, come to bed with me once and I'll change your opinion about that. She took it all in good heart. Clearly that's never going to survive today, is it? But that was very much the nature of the guy. But she absolutely, they were like brother and sister. Which, again, we're flying around all over the place.
I know, but I'm enjoying it.
If you look at the way Brambilla actually did her no favours in 1975 when they were teammates at March, you would think that would probably, really cause a rift, but it never seemed to.
And I mean, again, it is the time. Let's scoot up to the F1 career then, because it is. Does she get into? She goes. So she's gone single seater. She's been very quick against the Italian field, and the Italian field are looking to sort of fill the gap that's been left of Italian Formula One championship since what happened at Monaco in '67, and so therefore Baghetti, the death of Baghetti, and so therefore. Yeah, exactly. So how is her passage into does she do endurance first? Does she do it at the same time? How does she get into Formula 1? Because it's March, isn't it? Because March is, and and what March team is it? Because obviously March are to begin with, March is basically Sword or Max Mosley and my mind's gone blank now. Robin Hood, and they're building cars for people, aren't they? They're building cars for clients.
Well, so several questions there in one. Let's go from the beginning. So she's progressed through through Formula Monza, through something called Formula 850, which is about just below Formula 3 level, where she wins the championship. She goes through Formula 3, where she has a pretty good year in 1973 in Formula 3, and makes it to the final of the Monaco Formula 3 race. John Webb at Brands Hatch spots her doing well in that, realises that she's doing well in the Escort Mexico Championship in Italy, which she's driving concurrently with Formula 3, invites her to come over to Brands Hatch to take part in the Ford Escort Mexico celebrity races that were happening at Brands in 73, where they would either do something crazy like stick a load of Formula 1, Radio 1 DJs in the cars and see how they got on, or they'd get everybody who finished in the top 3 in all of the races at this particular event at Brands Hatch, stick him in a race, see how they get on at the end of the day. And she competed in one of those in the middle of 73, and she's beating people like Tony Breeze, who was touted as a future world champion, Tom Price, whatever. So she did very well in that mixed field. So Webb thinks, okay, this girl's got something. He got her a track test with Jackie Epstein's Formula 5000 team. So Jackie Epstein was running the Shell Sport Luxembourg Lolas in 1974. So she leaps from Formula 3 and leaps by about 250, 300 horsepower into Formula 5000 cars, which are basically pushing out the same sort of power as an F1 car. Finished 4th in the first race and has a reasonable season. She didn't win in Formula 5000, but by the end of the season, she's running the top quarter of the field. During that year, she'd been introduced to a fellow called Count Gugi Zanon. And Zanon is a benefactor figure in motor racing. He was Ronnie Peterson's backer. He was the guy who bought Senna out of his contract at Tolman when he moved over to Lotus. He and his brother helped Alboreto. So he was always a sort of background figure. But Zanon was intrigued by the story of this sort of butcher's girl who paid her own way through the sport to get up to where she got to. So he backed her in a couple of sports car races in 74. For 1975, March, which, as you say, originally started as a customer car manufacturer whilst running its own F1 team and always overstretched itself, always short of money, had good design ideas, but wheeled and dealed its way through without really ever having a financial platform on which to do it. March was just about bankrupt at the end of 1974, and they were cutting back to a one-car effort for 1975. They had Hans Struck under option, but basically released him because they knew they couldn't afford to run him. So they were going to just run Brambilla in 1975. And Zanon comes along and says, well, I tell you what, I'll give you £50,000 to run a second car in 1975, provided you put Lella Lombardi in it. Zanon's wife, incidentally, was Puki Lavazza from the coffee company, which is why Lella's car is carrying Lavazza sponsors. Now,
as a coffee addict, this is another reason I love. I mean, and again, there's two things. There's the iconic orange of Brambilla's. Is he running the orange this season, or is it 76?
Yeah, he's running Beta.
Yeah, and it's just a gorgeous car. And he wins in Austria, doesn't he, in that year, 75, and then famously spins it. Yeah, and
stuck it in the barrier.
Yeah, well, why not? Why not? But all the cars have got different liveries. But I mean, she's quick and she's good. But also, I mean, what's the reaction? Because there are knuckle draggers, but then the great Niki Lauda, who wasn't the most this car is bullshit, etc. He wasn't the most progressive, was he? But he just said, look, if she can drive the car, put her in the car, etc., etc.
If she's good enough, why shouldn't she drive?
Yeah.
It's quite interesting that you look at the people who didn't want her to drive and the people who did. So when she was, she raced Formula 5000s in the States a couple of times. Mario Andretti, who could spot a fellow racer when he saw one. He said, she's the same as we are. His exact words were, the only difference between us and her is, she hasn't got balls, but she has. Whereas Ladd was very much of the view, okay, she's made a bit differently, but she could do the job. Lella didn't recognise a gender difference. She never saw herself as a female racing driver or as a woman racing driver. She saw herself as a racing driver who's a woman. And that was a real distinction that she was very keen to make. Famously said, under the helmet, men and women are the same. She had a kind of blind spot when it came to gender.
Well, interesting, because she is, in a world of LTBGQ plus whatever, fly a flag. She's gay, but it's not a thing. She doesn't hide it. She's.
Well, it's a very good point you make there, because what you have to remember is that we see history now, or we look at history through the lens of today. There was a recent book that came out where Lella's mentioned it, and she's described as being a member of the LGBTQ plus community.
Yeah.
That community did not exist in 1975. People, of course, had their own orientations, which was absolutely fine. But there was actually, in many ways, a greater acceptance and just carry on with it rather than having to stick a badge on it. Lella's family were very keen, very, very keen that she was not projected as a rainbow icon, because that's not who she was.
Yeah.
She made no secret of the fact that she was in a relationship with Fiorenza when she went to races, and that they attended races together, Fiorenza being her partner. But when she's interviewed in contemporary magazines all the way through her career, and certainly up to the mid-1970s, you get a lot. The journalists would regularly say to her things like, "What does your boyfriend think about you racing? If you get married, would you retire?" Yada yada. Yeah. And she would normally say something along the lines of, "I've got no plans to do that. I've got a car. Why do I need a boyfriend?" She would. She never said, "I'm gay," but equally, she didn't make a secret of the fact. But she was very. And herein was one of the biggest problems with doing the book, insofar as she went to great lengths to protect Fiorenza from media attention.
Yeah.
She gave relatively few interviews, but even but she had friends in the media community. But say the journalists from Auto Sprint who knew her and Fiorenza well enough to come round and have dinner with them at their home did not know Fiorenza's surname.
Yeah.
And if you were now to go onto the internet and Google Lella Lombardi's partner Fiorenza, you will not find her surname. It's not there.
Yeah.
I eventually found it out by asking somebody who was a childhood friend of them, and we know what Fiorenza did and what her interests were and what their businesses were together and all of that, and made her a bit more of a three-dimensional person.
Sure.
But Lella was fiercely protective of Fiorenza's privacy.
And let's go on. Because I can talk to you until whatever, but we've only got 4 minutes left. Barcelona 75. It's a nightmare race. There have been, there is where she scores the point. Only in those days, only the top 6 score points. She's doing well. Most of the leading, and Montjuic is a ridiculously fast track and a throwback, and it goes through a park and it's downhill and it's quick, and the spectators are far too near to the racing cars themselves. Take it away.
Yeah. So the drivers arrive at Montjuic, which imagine a very fast Monaco. They arrive there. And find that the crash barriers aren't bolted together. So the mechanics all frantically are out there screwing the crash barriers together. The drivers are saying they're not raced, but eventually they race with the gun to the head. People are crashing all over the place, either because they're getting overexcited or the state of the place is a bit tricky for them. Lella is one of the ones who keeps her head down and doesn't have any accidents and doesn't get tangled up with anybody else. About just before half distance, Rolf Stommelin's hill goes over the brow just past the start finish line where the Olympic Stadium was, and as he crests the brow, the supports to his rear wing snap off. The car hits the inside barriers, flips over to the outside barriers, but because the road is falling away, he actually lands on top of the barriers. Very luckily for him, he lands the right way up, but he does go over the other side, killed 4 photographers, officials, and a couple of people who shouldn't be standing there. It then takes them 3 or 4 laps before they stop the race. There's chaos going on. But Lella is running 6th at that point, so she is awarded a fairly joyless 6th place half point scoring finish because the race had stopped early. Yeah. It wasn't actually her best drive of that year. Her 7th place in the German Grand Prix was a better drive.
At the ring.
At the Nürburgring.
Yeah, the old ring. Right. I mean, just 14.2 kilometres of absolute bloody hell, basically.
Yeah, completely. And Robin Hurd always said, it was that as well. But Robin Hurd always says that her drive at the ring in 75 was a better effort than the point scoring finish at Barcelona.
Is 75 her is it? She did one season in F1, or
she did a few races in 76. March sacked her after one race because they were basically manipulating Peterson back into the team.
Yeah.
She did a few races for John McDonald's Ram Racing Brabhams in the middle of the year. 76. You were talking about the eclecticism of her career. Yeah. So in 1976, at one end she's racing Formula One for March and Brabham. She's also racing at Le Mans in Lancia Stratos.
Ooh.
But she also does 2 races of Citroën 2CV Rallycross in Italy. Now, I can't think of somebody who's the extremes of their career are that great, but in the same year. She'd race anything.
You're handling in Lancia Stratos down the old Mulsanne, yeah? And at the same time, you're thinking next weekend I'm going to be in a stripped-down 2CV somewhere near Modena.
Well, and bearing in mind that the Stratos was designed as the world's first purpose-built rally car, it was not built for doing Le Mans.
Very uncomfortable.
The only reason they managed to get it to do any speed down Le Mans was they put bigger wheels on it. That was the only way.
That must have made the tricky infield sections interesting. Look, I'm going to run out of time. So, what do you? Because she dies incredibly young of all things of breast cancer, didn't she? It's really tragic.
Oh, it's horrendous. Yeah, I mean, she'd had a successful touring car career. She'd just set up her own team, but she'd suffered a sailing accident in 1985 where she'd been hit by the boom of the boat she was helming. She suffered pain afterwards, which she thought was a consequence of that. And by the time they diagnosed what the problem was, it was too late. So yes, she was just short of her 51st birthday and died of breast cancer. Shocker.
The book is called Lella Lombardi, The Tigress of Turin. It's by John Saltinstall. John, if people want to find you online, where's the best place to track you down and say nice things?
Well, they can find me just by searching my name. They can find the book if they Google Douglas Loveridge Publications.
And also it's available via our own virtual bookstore.
It is.
It is.
Thank you.
Are you on the socials? Can they find
we're on all the usual socials. You'll find me on Facebook. You'll find me on the other bits. So and say hi, and I'm happy to tell you more.
John, I will do that probably after the show. Thank you so much. I'm going to run out of time. Thank you so much for your time today.
Always a pleasure. Thanks for having me on, Josh.